está ya, a ver, creo que
Okay.
ya le di.
Sí,
Y
ahora
ahora
se
sí
está más
estamos
libre.
libres.
We're waiting. Ok, empiezo.
Ujú. Sí, Alejandro, por favor.
Porque cuando estoy en la página de YouTube y no veo nada más que el mismo screen todo el tiempo, no se ve nada, no está transmitiendo.
Aquí sí me está figurando que ya está transmitiendo.
Ok. And go to the YouTube page, pero no se ve nada. Okay. Well, how you doing, everybody? Welcome to this webinar. As part of the course that you've been doing in data analytics and big data, I think I thought it would be good to invite someone to give a talk about what does a physicist is able to do, with skills that they get through their physics education plus other skills that they're able to get along the way. So this talk is in English because my colleague Ayan Paul, he got his education from the University of Notre Dame, his doctorate, his PhD. After Notre Dame, he went to do 5 years in Rome and the University of Rome, La Sapienza, and he's focused mostly on the physics of quarks. Basically, I just want to call it that, which also called the physics of flavor. Flavor meaning the different types of quarks that there are in the universe, so 6 of them. He's studied this in depth, but he's also developed code to do a lot of the analyses and fits that he needed to do in order to be able to publish his work. Is very numerically intensive, and so he developed lots of tools that today are used in the field, right? Um, he then went on to work to Germany, where he is now doing other work, not completely all related to physics, but he's doing some work now on how to understand the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, which not only affects people physically, of course, but it also affects people from different backgrounds, not just physical backgrounds, but also socioeconomic backgrounds. And he's using his expertise from his physics education, along with his expertise with, modeling and numerical analytical work, um, to understand how the disease is impacting different people across the world. I think another cool thing he's really looking at is what is intelligence, right? And how does intelligence um, behave, or how does it emerge, or what are the dynamics of intelligence? So now Ian, from a student, he went onto a postdoc, and now he's basically an entrepreneur, un emprendedor. So he's started his own company. He's the co-founder and also the chief scientist. This is a startup, a company which is trying to address the risk associated with COVID-19 based on, you know, everything you do during your day, right? And where you live and how you interact with people, etc. So he's developing ways for people to be able to understand the disease, but also to help them mediate and mitigate this disease. So today he'll be talking to you about, a little bit of his work in physics, but a lot of about his work he's been able to accomplish outside of physics, but using, physics as the foundation of his of who he is and who he is as a scientist. So thank you, Ayan, for taking your time from your Saturday night to talk to everybody from a lot of places in South America and Central America. You got Ecuador, Colombia, Peru, Argentina, Mexico. So I hope you find this as enjoyable as probably they will. Thank you.
Thanks, Alejandro. It's a pleasure to actually talk to such an audience, because it's not like every day we get to talk to young people and young enthusiastic people. What I will do today is I will basically I will talk about some of my work. I'm continuing in physics, but what I will not talk about is my core expertise in physics. I think I should start sharing my screen, right, Alejandro?
Yeah, that would be good. But let me just say one thing. If you want to ask Ayan a question at any time, just type either in YouTube or in Zoom that you want to ask a question. If you want to ask a question in person, just tell me that you want to ask it, and I'll give you the floor, or type it up and I'll ask it. Thank you. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you. Yes, so please feel free to ask questions anytime you feel like. My point is not that I should finish my talk. My point is that you should gain something out of what I speak today. So, okay, there we go. Now, as I was saying, I don't think I will talk about my core expertise in physics, which is studying the decay of quarks, etc., and also Higgs physics. None of these I will talk about today. What I will talk about today is how I use all of those skills that I gained over the years trying to do physics to do other kinds of physics, and also to bring it into the real world as an applicable science. So all of this talk will be about applicable sciences. So the topic that people talk about most now, and the topic which is probably relevant to most now, is the pandemic, because it has changed everyone's lives, that we already know. If we want to put numbers to it, this is the number of cases and deaths and etc. from today. But to put it into real perspective, one has to look into how this has affected the world and different countries. This is just a classification of the number of deaths because of different diseases. Lower respiratory infection, which is what COVID-19 is, causes about 2.5 million deaths all over the world. And COVID-19 alone has caused 1.25 million deaths already, after all these restrictions, after all these measures that have been taken. Peru has been particularly badly hit. There are already more than 34,000 deaths. And as you see, this is now the leading cause of death in Peru. It's more than the number of people that are killed by cancer, let's say. So this is a very, very large number. Even for the United States, which is a very advanced country, this has come at a very large price. Almost 250,000 people dead, which is nearly half of the number of, or a third of the number of people that are killed from cancer. So this is real. This is not something which people say is okay, maybe it's happening. No, this is very real. There are the number of deaths have gone up by a large fraction in every country. So some of the countries are managing to do really well, some of them not. Of course, one thing you must understand when you start looking at numbers is that numbers are reported differently in different countries. There's a lot of variation in it. So any percentage that you calculate of the case fatality rate or whatever, it's going to be skewed because of the way things are reported. However, it still gives you a kind of picture of how things are working in the entire world, and how the disease is progressing. The thing about COVID-19 is that there are several strains which are spreading throughout the world, and the transmission pattern, as you see, is very closely related to the mobility pattern. So it went from one country to another, solely carried by humans and transmitted from one place to another. And it's a very complex pattern. It's very difficult to understand. Why do we need to understand this? Because if we have to control a disease, we have to control its transmission. And in all of this, there is a lot of physics hidden, which you can study. And if you can crack the code in here, which these lines tell you, you can understand the disease pattern, then you can actually stop it, which is where physics comes in. Medicine is the first, how would I say, it's the first attack that you take against a disease. The second attack that you take against a disease is to understand how to stop it. And sometimes the answers come from very strange places, which is why physics becomes important here. So there are several key concerns, and us as physicists who deal with numbers, crunch numbers, we cannot help uh, in some places, like drug development and vaccine development. There are things that we can do there, but not so much. However, what we can do is modeling healthcare, modeling immunity assessment. These things are areas that physicists can help in. How do you help there? Because anywhere there is numbers, you can take those numbers, build models, and try to see what works and what does not work, which is basically my philosophy to working with problems related to COVID-19. Now, the first thing we wanted to study when the pandemic started is contact tracing. Now, why do you want to study contact tracing? Because in all previous pandemics, contact tracing was one of the best methods to stop the disease. And what is contact tracing? It's basically you find an infected person and you try to look at everyone he has come in contact with in the past few days when the disease, when the person was already infected. You find those people and you quarantine them, and you find their contacts and you quarantine them, and you continue doing this. Typically, it was done by humans, people calling other people on the phone, etc., etc. And this kind of worked for many diseases. For COVID-19, this cannot work simply because of the scale of the pandemic. If you have a few million people infected, finding their contacts means tens of millions of people, and their contacts means hundreds of millions of people. And you cannot possibly make that many phone calls or contact that many people. So a procedure of automated contact tracing was advocated by Google and Apple. We wanted to study whether automated contact tracing will actually work. So we wrote a paper which you can find on the archive, but the idea is very simple. You have a bunch of people, let's say A, B, C, and D, and A is infected. Now, we all know that you have to stay a certain distance away from infected people, and then you don't get infected. And this is usually taken as 2 meters. Also, it is said that if you don't spend a lot of time with infected people, then maybe you will not get infected. So we define a circle here where we say that if 2 circles intersect, then D, B, and C have a chance of getting infected from A. Now, they will only get infected if they are next to A for a very long time. So if after a certain period of time, D is no longer in contact with A, but B and C are, then B and C have the chances of getting infected while D does not have the chance of or the chances of D getting infected is quite low. So you do not need to trace it. So this is what happens now. And then after if A goes and gets tested, A tests positive, and now it is A's choice whether he will tell B and C that he got tested positive, or he will report on his app that he got infected. That is a choice that A can make because he cannot be forced to report his infection. So suppose A makes that choice, reports that he is infected, and B also has this app which tells him that he came in contact with A. So B gets to know that A is infected, but C does not, because C did not have this app or this method, whatever it might be. So you can only connect 2 people if both are using the same method for contact tracing, right? So again, there is another problem that A might have a false negative test result. So even if he's positive, he might test as negative, in which case neither will B or C get to know that they have been in contact with someone who is infected. So taking all of this into account, you can calculate the number of individuals that can be traced by automatic contact tracing. Don't worry so much about the equation. It's a really simple equation if you know the definitions of the terms. Now, there is another thing which comes in. If A and C and B are in contact with each other, there is a probability of transmission of the disease, and the probability does not need to be 1. Just because you've been standing next to a person who's infected does not mean you will get infected. You might get infected. That is the probability of getting infected. And then you need to quarantine a certain fraction of people who have been infected to stop the disease from spreading. Why? Because if you, let's say, quarantine 60% of the people, the 40% of the others cannot spread enough disease for the disease to continue spreading. So there is a fraction that you need to stop, and that depends on the disease characteristics, how infectious it is, how quickly it spreads, etc., etc. So finally, you get a number that need to be quarantined. And finally, what happens is the number of individuals that need to be quarantined can be traced, then you're fine. However, if you cannot trace all the people who need to be quarantined, you cannot succeed. And this is basically our argument that the number of individuals traceable by automatic contact tracing is this, whereas the number of individuals that need to be quarantined has to be equal to this. And this number up top has to be greater than this number in the bottom, or equal to. So from that, you get a minimum fraction of the population who needs to be enrolled in contact tracing. And from that, varying these parameters, you get a nice curve like you get anywhere in physics. And then you say, okay, let me look at something. Let me say the transmission probability is 40%, and I fix all of the other parameters to some reasonable value. I say, let's say 80% of the people are reporting it. I need to contain 75% of the disease. You put all of these together, and you see that 60% of the population needs to use contact tracing, automated contact tracing, 60%. And automated contact tracing can only be done with smartphones as of now. The number of people who have smartphones in America, or the fraction of people who have smartphones in America, is 80%. The fraction of people who have smartphones in Europe is 70%. The fraction of people who have smartphones in India is 40%. So how will you make everyone use automated contact tracing when everyone does not have smartphones? That is the biggest hurdle to automated contact tracing. So you say, fine, whoever has it will use it, but again, this is voluntary, so not everyone will use it. So from here, you see that even if 40% of the population enrolls, or 20% of the population enrolls, you just cannot contain the disease. So governments have been spending a lot of money on automated contact tracing, but automated contact tracing alone will not stop the disease. That is the conclusion. And how did we get there? By a simple probabilistic approach, often known as a mean field calculation, where I assume some averages, and then you get the answer. The good thing about this is when people, in addition, did a more complex network analysis with agents and everything, a very complex model, they come to the same answer. They come to the answer that the minimum required enrollees, the people who need to enroll, goes as the square root of the people who need to get quarantined. So this is a very nice result which comes out of just simple physical argument of how a system works. So of course, I've put in some more details in case you want to take a look at it later, but this basically says that unless you have a very low probability of transmission, you have a very high testing accuracy, and you have a lot of people actually reporting, almost everyone reporting when they are sick, you need a very large fraction of people to actually enroll in the system, and that is sometimes not very feasible. So
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Quick question. So the number of enrollees has to be greater than or equal to the square root of the number of the people you can quarantine?
Yes.
That would make the number of enrollees smaller, wouldn't?
So this is the left hand side is the number of individuals traceable by automatic contact tracing, and this is the number who need to be quarantined.
Okay.
So the number you trace always has to be greater than or equal to the number you need to quarantine.
Oh, okay.
Right. So which is
the minimum.
Yes, that's the minimum threshold. It's not the so the minimum is the equal to, because otherwise it's greater than.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's where this equation comes in from.
Okay.
And you see, even if everyone reports they are sick when they are tested positive, and the tests are perfect, which is FC equal to 1, RC equal to 1, even then it goes as square root of FT times PT, which is basically the fraction of people who need to be quarantined.
Thank you.
So, okay, good. So this is one work which I did around May or so, I think, April or May. And then we started thinking about what else can we do with the COVID-19 data. One big question which always comes in, and it's important in all parts of the world, is that is there any discrimination which is made worse because of the pandemic? Discrimination is there everywhere in the world. We know that there are poor people, there are rich people, there's people of all colors. Some get treated properly, some don't get treated properly. And the main question here is COVID-19 affecting a certain class of people more than another class of people? This is the question we wanted to ask. Or in other words, as it said, we are in the same storm, but not in the same boat, right? So what did we do? There's a lot of data available from the United States. So we looked at the United States at the county level. The county in the United States is equivalent to the district in other countries. And we looked at how COVID-19 is spreading. The first thing which you say about a disease which is infectious and spreads due to contact is that it will spread in denser regions much faster than less dense regions. Very logical. Why? Because if people are coming in contact with each other, which happens more often in a densely packed society, then the disease will spread faster. And if not, it will spread slower. But if you look at the population density map and the COVID-19 spread, you clearly see that this is not the case, because there is a lot of spread in areas where the population is not so dense. Of course, there is New York where it's spread and the population is really high. But there is no very tight correlation between density and the case rate. There is also not a very close tie between the density and the death rate. So we asked ourselves the question, so what is determining all of this? What we did was we went into the census data for the United States, and census data is easy to access, it's public data. And we took all of these numbers from there, the fraction of non-white people, the fraction of unemployment, or the unemployment rate as it is called, the fraction of poor people in a county, the fraction of senior citizen in a county. Senior citizen is above 65 years of age. So the fraction of people who are really old in a county. Why did we take that? Because it's well known that COVID-19 affects older people much more than younger people. So we wanted to see if counties which had a larger fraction of older people are getting affected more. So we put all of these numbers together, and when you have a whole bunch of variables, what do? The first thing you do is you combine all of them, right? So we took all of these numbers. Of course, these are only 4 of them. We took about 10 of them. We included population density, and we tried to correlate it with the COVID-19 cases and deaths. So when you want to correlate something, you typically want to do a regression. Many of you might have already done fits in your math classes or in your physics work. You basically have numbers and you try to fit a straight line, or you try to fit a curve or whatever. So if you have data, you try to fit to understand it. Now, if you have multivariate data, that is, there are many variables in the game, it is very difficult to do a very simple fit. That is when you start using things like machine learning, because machine learning is very good at doing multivariate analysis, especially if you do not know the underlying physics that is going into it. If you know something has to be a straight line, you can fit a straight line. But suppose you don't know it is a straight line, then what do? You have to assume a general functional form and you have to fit. And machine learning is very good at doing that. Just to quote Yogi Berra, a very famous baseball coach in America, he said, you can observe a lot just by watching. And what are we watching here? We are watching the data and we are trying to see what the data tells us, right? Because this is a new disease, the data will tell us what is happening. We don't have any knowledge about it. But machine learning has this bad reputation of being a black box. So people say that you put in data, you get out some data, you don't understand what it is doing. But things are changing. You can actually understand what a machine learning algorithm is doing. It's called interpretable machine learning. It's very new, it's very recent, and the method I'm using was published this year. It's not even from a long time back. Of course, I'll tell you some details about it. So what it uses is something which has been developed a long time back in game theory, and it's called the Shapley value. It was developed in 1951, and it is a relatively easy thing to understand. You have three players who are playing a game, and the game has some rewards. Each player gets some reward, right? If no one plays, there is no reward. Let's say if only A plays, there is $7 reward. Only B plays, $4 reward. And you find all these combinations. If A and B plays, then it's $7 rewards. If A and C plays, then it's $15 reward. And if all of them play together, there's a $19 reward. So you compute all of this. Then what you do, it's a three-player game. You take all possible combinations of the player. Combinations as in, first A joins, then C joins, then B joins. In the second combination, you have A joins first, then B joins, and then C joins, right? So you take all these combinations and you see what your outcome is, right? And you can, the total will always be 19, but from this ordering that you understood, you can say who will contribute how much to the game. Because someone entering in the beginning of the game is not the same as the same person entering in the end of the game, right? So the order of entering a game sometimes matters. You might have heard if you give a test which has a certain kind of scoring, the first few questions matter a lot more than the last few questions, because the first few questions determines your average, and then the last few questions just changes it by a little bit. So this is something similar. With this, you can calculate, using all the numbers here, you can calculate the importance of each player. And that is the Shapley value of each player. Higher the Shapley value, more important is the player. And here, C is the most important player. How do we use it in machine learning? This is Shapley. He got a Nobel Prize in 2012 for his contribution to game theory and for Shapley values. In a machine learning algorithm, you have different variables, and this gives you an output. Each variable is responsible for a part of the output. And if you can study what part of the output these variables are responsible for, you can explain machine learning. So from a black box, it becomes a white box, where you can actually say age contributed this much, sex contributed this much, BP contributed this much, and then you can actually understand what is the most important factor in your prediction. And this is what we want to do. Why? Because we are taking all these variables and we are trying to understand how these contribute to the disease spread, including population density. So when we are doing this, we clearly understand that not all of these variables are equally important. Some will be more important, some will be less important. And that is what we want to understand using this machine learning algorithm. We use boosted decision trees. It's a very popular machine learning algorithm. And what do we get? These are the Shapley values. And as I said, higher the Shapley value, more important is the condition in determining the disease spread. And the red color says that it increases the disease spread. The blue color says that it decreases the disease spread. You can safely ignore the lower ones, only the higher ones are the ones which matter. And as you see that there is a strong correlation between, or a strong correlation between the fraction of non-white people in a county and the disease spread, which is also reflected here with a very high correlation, that the number of confirmed cases is very correlated with the fraction of non-white people in the county. Of course, how well your model has, how good your model fits is given by the Pearson's correlation coefficient, which in the case of the confirmed case rate is really high, so the modeling is good. For the death rate, the modeling is not so good and the correlation is a bit low. Now, this is the case for the East Coast. This is for all the states in the East Coast which have really high population density. Even when the population density is really high there, the population density is not the factor that is most correlated with disease spread. It's actually the third, right? So let's look at another region, the southern states, where there was the second wave. The East Coast got the first wave. Of course, it's starting again there. And the southern states got the second wave. And here you see by far the fraction of non-white people is what determines the spread. And that has the highest correlation with disease spread. The second one is surprising. Second one is the fraction of senior citizen, which means that the fraction of older people in a county. But it is anti-correlated, as you see here. And why is it surprising? Older people are supposed to get more easily sick from COVID-19. However, this says that counties which have older people, or the average age of a county is higher, the disease spread is lower, which means that the disease is being spread by the younger people while the older people are being affected. And if a county has lower number of younger people, then people move less in the county. And hence the disease spread is slow, very young, because that is where the spread is most. That the highest correlation is with the fraction of non-white people, and the lowest, and there is, for the death rate, there is an anti-correlation with the fraction of senior citizen, as I mentioned before. And as you see, the anti-correlation is really high between disease spread and fraction of senior citizen in the county. So what does this all tell us? I will not go through this entire list, but I'll give you a summary of what this told us. It told us that the disease spread is not universal. There are many factors which are aggravating it in certain counties. Why is it important? Because when the government makes policies, when states allocate resources, they have to know where to send the resources. And being able to tell where to send the resources is actually a very important thing. Because if you send the resources to the wrong place, then bringing it back to the right place takes time. And in a pandemic which spreads so fast, you don't have that time. So you should be able to say, by looking at the demographics of any county, that this is where I will send my resources. And this is what we try to do. Of course, there are a few caveats. Firstly, correlation does not imply causation. It's very important. Just because there is a correlation between A and B does not mean A caused B. So there might be a correlation between all the number of, let's say, supermarkets in a city and the number of COVID cases. However, that does not mean the supermarkets caused COVID-19. That cannot be said. So you have to be very careful about what variables you choose, number one. Secondly this is more of a descriptive study, which means that you don't have strong predictive power. So if I take one county, I cannot say with a very high confidence that the disease spread will be like that. All I can say is there are chances that it will be bad in this county or not so bad in this county. That is what our aim was. And this is what we work on in this paper. I've just put in the list of the papers I've worked on in COVID-19. The last paper is more or less a review on network science and sustainable exit strategies. Those of you who want to do condensed matter or statistical physics, network science is typically known as soft condensed matter, and network science is very applicable. It's very new. It's a very powerful technique. It's not so new. It's almost 20, 25 years old now, but okay. Network science is still growing, and it is a very good tool to study different dynamical systems, and it's very, very interesting. So this is just to show that there's been a lot of work being done about COVID-19. This is a network of all the keywords that are appearing in the archive, and you see a lot of it is around COVID-19, and there's this cluster for advanced methods. There's cluster for modeling, and you can see different clusters. It's very nice. That's the power of network theory.
Ayan, I have a question from someone in YouTube.
Cool.
The question is, can this model be considered in other countries, right? I guess with that, it comes like, how do you choose the Shapley values to, because I mean, countries change, right? So players are different.
So, okay, yes, the model can be used for different countries purely because we are using a machine learning tool. A machine learning tool does not make any model assumption. It's very general. So if I get, let's say, data for Germany, which I'm working on now, I can again apply the same machine learning algorithm to do the regression. For the Shapley values are calculated from the machine learning model. So once I train the model, then I calculate the Shapley value for that model, right? So every country will have a different data set, will have a different model, and will have different Shapley values. In fact, even your choice of variables might differ. A very good example is the number of uninsured people. It's not very important here, but let's say, why did we choose uninsured people in America? Because in America, the insurance system is privatized. People need to buy their own insurance, and there are plenty of people who are not insured. This is not the model in some other countries. Like in Italy, everyone has health insurance. They don't have to buy it separately. So the fraction of uninsured is 0. So that variable would not matter at all. So you have to be judicious about what variables you choose. And depending on that, your model will be built by the machine learning algorithm. And then the Shapley values for these variables will be calculated from the model. So every country will have a different Shapley value. Okay.
Thank you. One more question. Another question is from YouTube. Are complex systems difficult to tackle at first? I mean, this is a complex system, but it's traceable, right? Because well, people are getting sick, and you're basically, you know, if they go to the hospital, you can trace them, and then you can figure out where they came from, socioeconomics, et cetera, et cetera. But that was the question. Are complex systems difficult to tackle at first? Like this?
Okay, complex systems by its name is complex. These are very difficult systems to tackle. The reason why network theory works good in complex systems is because it is very data driven. Let's put it that way. You can take a lot of data and you can build a network out of it, looking at the connections. Once you build a network has some features which you can study. And this is the power of network theory or network science in analyzing complex systems. The problem with complex systems is you cannot write one equation which will explain it. Like you cannot write one equation which will explain the banking network or the internet and how traffic flows in an internet. So you have to collect data, you have to build your network, and you have to study that system. So indeed, it is very difficult to tackle, but people have been getting increasingly good at it with classification of different kinds of complex systems, classification of different kinds of networks, and finding common things. Like there is something common between the air traffic network and the internet network. The internet network, as in the network of routers, the network of web pages, and the banking system, and the social network between you and your friends. All of them are scale-free networks. And so one property describes many different kinds of systems. And it is this commonality that network theory tries to find in complex systems.
What is a scale-free networks?
The scale-free networks essentially means that, let's say Google, everyone is connected to Google, right? So there is this big hub which is connected to everyone. And then there is my website, which not many people visit. It's not connected to too many places, so it has very few connections. A scale-free network basically means that there will be some very, very large hubs, very few of them, but very large. And there will be some which will be very small, but there will be plenty of them, right? And this basically, if you plot it on a log plot, it looks like a straight line. So and this is what is called scale free, because there are very few large hubs, very small, very few large hubs and very many small hubs. And this property we see in many places. Even if you look at, let's say, air traffic, there are some cities where a lot of flights go in, let's say London Heathrow, New York, etc., etc. However, there are plenty of airports, like in almost every little city and town, where very few flights go. So this also follows a scale-free structure.
So if you increase the number of small hubs, you don't change the properties of the.
Yes, it doesn't change drastically. However, if you take out a large node, it can possibly break down the network.
I get it. And the last question, which I think is an interesting one, how do you include the psychological situation of a country, right? Their belief systems, I don't know. Can you include that? I guess, could that be a variable, right? I guess a political affiliation, maybe any type of psychological component.
What is missing is that data around that is missing. So if you have data, maybe we can try, but it is very difficult to do because these typically don't have a very strong correlation. There are two things. Firstly is comparing two countries, right? Let's say you say that I want to compare Germany and Italy. Why would we want to compare them? Because in Italy, people are very close. They're very closely knit. The families live together. They are very, they like hanging out together and doing things together. So you would say that disease that spreads by contact would spread much easier in Italy. Whereas in Germany, it's people are not so close with each other, right? So and they are very careful about transmission of disease, etc. So we can study that, but you cannot focus on only this variable because there are too many things. There's also the political decisions taken. There's also how the disease started. In Italy, it started in small towns where people were older. So a lot of people died. In Germany, it started in cities where people came back from vacations and there were spikes in the disease. So since all of these are very different, focusing on one factor is very difficult. You have to collect a whole set of factors and then try to understand what is important. Of course, the psychological impact of pandemic is really important, and it is a study which has been done. It has been done by some of my colleagues also, and it is something which needs to be approached at a smaller scale, in the sense that it needs to be approached on a regional basis rather than the entire country. That is my opinion. Of course, if I find a good way of doing it in a whole country, I will try. But for now, I don't know if it can be done in an entire country.
Yeah, thank you, Ayan.
Well,
yeah, I'm sorry. There's a lot of questions though. Last one. I think I could answer this. So, do you need supercomputers to keep the system running? And I think the answer probably is no, right?
No, the machine learning algorithms can be run on laptops, so it's not a problem. It takes a lot of time. Maybe you have to leave it overnight to finish the calculation, but you don't need supercomputers.
Thank you.
So yes, you can do it at home also. I mean, the code that I wrote is public. The data is public. You can run my code. It will take a little bit of time, but you will see the same results. I mean that is actually a very important part of science, that the results that you produce must be reproducible. And one way of doing it is to make your codes public. I mean, there is no problem in sharing knowledge with people. So I typically make all my codes public so that people can reuse it and people can check if I made any mistakes or not. That's a very useful thing.
Yeah, thank
Again, another one of Yogi Berra's quotes. It says, if you come to a fork in the road, take it. So if you come to a road which splits into two, you don't stand there and keep deciding which one to take, because then you will never go anywhere. You just take it. You just go where you have to go.
I mean, I'm going to say in Spanish so that, I mean, maybe people understood, but I guess that translation is cuando llegas a una bifurcación, tómala. Esa es la traducción. Cualquier opción es buena, digamos. O vas a tener que tomar una opción definitivamente. All right, thanks.
Thank you, Aladra. I think Arnold has asked a question, how difficult the job is to collect data or work on it. It takes a little bit of time depending on where the data is. However, it's not something which is hugely difficult. It is something which many of you can do. In fact, with me in this work, there was a graduate student from DAISY who worked on it, and he also worked on getting the data and analyzing it. So it is not complicated. It also depends on the country. In USA, Germany, the data is very well organized. Whereas if I want to get the data from India, let's say, it will not be so well organized, so I might have to dig a bit deeper. But data is available, documentation is done. So it's possible to get it, no problem. Okay, so when the fork in the road came and I had to decide whether I will take the leap, I took the leap and I went into some entrepreneurship. What did we do? So basically, I had participated in a hackathon in the beginning of April. We won the hackathon. We developed an algorithm for assessing risk to COVID-19 for individuals. We named the company Covis, and now we are actually building the app. And what we want to do with Covis is to build the future of disease surveillance, as to track where and how fast disease spreads. I will go into a little bit of details of what Covis is. We actually won the hackathon twice, once as an advanced team, and it was quite nice to get a validation of our work. So what made me actually want to do this? I have done a lot of data analysis for physics, a lot of advanced methods. I have to know statistics really well. I have to do fittings all the time. I have to make predictions all the time. And all of this can be actually applied in the real world. When I was growing up and trying to understand what I want to do, abstract physics always appealed to me. Something about quarks, something about the universe, something about matter, this and that. And I'm still absolutely fascinated by all these abstractions. However, as I grow older, what I realize is all that I have learned over these years, these can be used for real world problems to actually help people. And even if you don't want to say, okay, I don't want to, if you say, I don't want to help people, I don't really care. However, what you do leaves a trace. And when you do something which affects other people in a positive way, then your work means a lot more. And this is why I wanted to see if I can use the skills that I learned in physics while having a lot of fun doing physics to actually use it in the real world. And the hackathon was really good because I found a really nice, powerful team. MIT organizes hackathon, I think, around once a month or so. So those of you who are interested in participating in it, you can just look for MIT hackathon and you will find it. In fact, right now I'm participating in another hackathon, another MIT hackathon. My teammates are working while I give this talk. And one of my teammates is actually from Peru. I don't know exactly where from Peru he is. So there are people from different countries all over the world working in these hackathons. They are typically 1,500 people broken up into, I don't know, 200 teams or so who compete. And it's very competitive. You have to do a lot of things in a couple of days. And not only do you have to make sure it is something meaningful, you have to make sure it is applicable, you have to make sure it has a business strategy, you have to make sure that it is sustainable. You cannot just say, I will do this calculation and I don't know why it matters. You have to be able to say, this is what I'm delivering and this is what the benefits are and this is who is going to pay for it, right? Whether the government pays for it, whether the corporations pay for it, whether your users pay for it, all those decisions need to be made. Of course, those are not final decisions, but then it is a beginning. And this is how the beginning of COVIS was. We came together, we discussed a lot. The problem was a difficult problem. The problem was to assess immunity development in individuals, something that still cannot be done. But we started with the immunity angle, and then we realized that to understand immunity, you have to understand risk to COVID-19, because the more risk you take, the more chances you have of getting infected. And if you get infected, you might get immune. Now, if you get infected, you should know, right? But the trick with COVID-19 is sometimes you get infected in an asymptotic manner where the symptoms don't show, or in a subclinical manner where the symptoms are so light. Maybe you have a cough, maybe you have a slight fever, but it's not enough for you to get tested, so you don't care. And but you still got infected. And even those kind of infections can possibly give you immunity. However, we haven't cracked the code yet of assessing immunity. We are working on it. So in the meantime, we decided to actually calculate the risk that individuals have. So we got this going. We started the company. We won the we won the hackathon, and then we started the company. We got some money to build the app from Daisy in Germany. It's the company, it's the research lab I work for. We got some AWS support where we are building the backend. Basically, the algorithms and the codes that we use to do all the calculations, they have to be put in the backend, because you cannot do complicated calculations on the phone. You have to do it in the servers. And then once everything is done in the servers, it is sent to the phone, where the phone kind of does the simple calculations of addition and multiplication and gives the result. So what are we trying to do? The lack of predictability of COVID-19 has been a huge problem, because no one has known what to do. Like, even if you talk to people, they will be like, should I send my kids to school? Should I open my restaurant? Is it go see my parents in another country? These are questions people ask. And sometimes there are no concrete answers. Like right now, I can fly to India, but whether I should fly to India or not, there is no one to tell me. That is my decision to make. And how will I make that decision? I have to see what the disease spread is like in India, to see how the disease spread is like in Germany. Will I infect my parents if I go there? Have I been living a risky life in Germany so that I can carry the infection? These are questions I need to ask myself. And this calculation, doing it in the head, is not easy. It's impossible, because you have to look into 10 different websites, gather 10 different numbers. You don't know how they affect you. You might have diabetes, in which case you might get a severe infection, but you don't know. All of these are a problem. And many different companies, organizations, etc., need this kind of information, not only individual people. So what we did was we built an algorithm for risk assessment, which can be used by insurance companies to understand whether they can reduce costs, whether they can improve the experience of those who have the insurance. If it's a private insurance company, they want to give a good package to their clients. And there is also a use case for employers where if you're working for a company and the company says, here, you get this app, now you can understand how COVID-19 spreads and you can make your decisions. This is a very good value proposition. Why? Because sometimes companies give you perks, right? Sometimes companies give you, let's say, a gym membership or something so that you stay healthy, or send you a food package or something of that sort. And this is a goodwill gesture. However, it also benefits the company, because if fewer employees are actually at risk to COVID-19, then the company can work much better. It does not have to shut down locations. It does not have to have people take sick leaves and etc. So this is good for employers also. And this is also good for hospitals, because hospitals need to know, let's say, their doctors, which one of them is at high risk and which one is not. They know it inside the hospital, because if someone is sent to the COVID ward, of course they are at high risk. But how about outside the hospital? It has been shown that almost 2/3 of the healthcare workers are infected outside the hospital. So if the hospital knows that certain people are at high risk, they can probably not send them, bring them to the hospital, or send them to a ward where they will not infect the other doctors, or let them work with people who have already had COVID-19, so that even if they get infected, they do not spread it. So it's things like that that they can decide upon if they know the risk a person has been taking. Our solution is basically an app-based solution. We are building an app which everyone will have on their phone. And it basically uses your location to understand where you're going, if you're going out a lot, if you're going out very little, if you're staying at home, if you're going to malls, if you're going to movie theaters, if you're going to restaurants, where you're going, and there's an associated risk with it. And once we understand that, we can tell users how much risk they've been taking. So this is in the backend in the AWS. We collect health literature, all the studies that have been done with COVID-19, all the big data. Big data is basically prevalence data, et cetera, from all the counties, any data that we can, which is useful. And then we run it through a machine learning algorithm, and we make some predictions. We actually make disease predictions. We have developed an innovative algorithm which predicts disease for the next 7 days. And that is more or less all that we need. And that is actually quite difficult to do at the county level to predict the daily case rates. We do all of that processing. We send the information to the phone. Anything that the user inputs stays on the phone, because we don't want to hurt privacy. If you're telling us about your diseases, we don't want to distribute it to everyone, or we don't even want to know it ourselves. We leave that on the phone. We send in all the data from the backend. We do the final additions and subtractions and multiplications on the phone, and we give you a number. The number tells you how much risk you've taken today, given where you are. Because if the place you're staying in has no COVID infections, your risk to COVID is 0. However, if it has high prevalence, your risk is high. But if you stay at home, your risk is low again. But if you go out, your risk increases. So this is the pattern that we want to follow and explain to everyone. So this is our value proposition. Now, technically speaking, this is where my knowledge comes in. I have done a lot of probability theory, a lot of Bayesian analysis, and all of that goes in together to give you the score of whether you can be infected or not. And based on many different factors that you tell us, your age, et cetera, all of these put together give you the final infection risk, or the risk of getting a severe infection if you get infected. Because if I get infected, maybe I will feel bad for a few days, but I might not be hospitalized. But if someone in their 70s gets infected, they will probably get hospitalized. So the probability of getting severely infected also changes with many parameters. Of course, a lot of machine learning goes into this, a lot of predictive modeling goes into this, and we had to build it over the last few months. It was very time consuming, very intense, but very rewarding. You can actually see that your work can make a difference to people's lives. And then, of course, we are now building the app. It will look something like this, close to something like this. And what really sets us apart from all the competition is that we do a real-time risk assessment. Elsewhere, you can also go to a website and you can see what risk you have to COVID-19. However, it's a one-time thing. You type in your details, you see what risk, you're done. However, this is an app you can carry around on your phone. It will know where you went and it will tell you what risks you have taken. So this is a solution which is more like a personal risk calculator for you. And I think this is a very good thing to understand what actions you will take. If you have been taking risky actions for the past few days, you check where you've been going, and then you can change your habits. You can say, instead of going to the supermarket 3 times a day, which no one does, but let's say someone goes 3 times a day, they can say, I will go once in 3 days. So this actually changes user behavior. What is very important to us is the user experience. The user experience should be really good, because when you're not doing physics, you have to think about these things. For physicists, what happens is, you take a code, you run a code, you get the numbers, you make some plots, and you write a paper. You don't care about what other people think so much. Of course, you can care about what physicists think, but you don't care about how simple the code is, how it can be understood, etc., etc. The entire algorithm which goes into COVIS is not super complicated. It is quite difficult, but it can be done in a matter of months, a few months. However, building the user experience so that people understand what we are saying, that the right scores are delivered at the right time, the right notifications are sent, the app is of the right color so that people don't get scared away, that people actually come back every day, because a good color will make people come back. A bad color will just throw off your users. It has to be professionally made. All of these matter. Why? Not because I want to sell the app, but because if I do not make an app which people want to use, they will not use it, then my purpose is defeated. My purpose is to make sure that people use my algorithm as much as possible. And these are things you have to think when you go into the real world. In the physics world, these don't matter. What matters is your boss, your colleagues, and the other physicists. And often, if you work like me, I don't even care so much about what other physicists say, as long as I think I'm right. And I have proved that I'm right, and everyone else agrees that I am right. I do not care so much about what others' physicists' opinion is. But in the real world, you really have to understand that you are serving your work to people, and whether they accept it or not really depends on how you serve it. It's like a very nicely made dish. Like if you make very good food and you don't put it on the plate correctly, people won't want to eat it, even if it's like really delicious. So it's a lot of presentation which is also involved. Of course, if I'm very hungry, I'll eat anything. But if you have competition, then the person who has arranged the food in a better manner is the one whose food is going to be eaten more, if it's equally delicious. So we do have business models. This is also something that you have to develop. Why? Because you cannot just write an algorithm and you can make an app and send it to the world. You can do that, but the app has to be sustainable. So you have to be able to pay for the costs. Everything you do costs. If you build the app, it costs. If you run the app, it will cost. You have to pay for the AWS. You have to pay for the Google API calls. And for that, you have to get money from somewhere. Our strategy was to have the basic risk calculator free for everyone, because it's a useful program that everyone should use. However, we have a premium set of features. If people want more, they can pay for it. It's called freemium. And then we also have a business plan for companies. They can pay for their employees, etc., etc. And that is where our money generation will happen, if it happens. We still don't know how successful this app is, because we are building it. We will deploy it. and then we will find out how useful it is. Hopefully, it will be very useful. But because of the nature of the disease, we can only release in a few countries at a time. For now, we are releasing only in the USA and Germany, and gradually we'll start covering the rest of the world too. So thank you very much. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, because it's always good to talk to young people and see if I can encourage them to do something which they haven't thought about before. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you, Ayan. Yeah, and another thing, it's you were able to build a team with people that some of them you knew, some of them you didn't know so much. Then you guys did a hackathon, competed against many people from all over the world, and then you won. And I don't know how. I've never been to a hackathon. I don't know. I know what they're like, but I don't know. That competitive component of it. But my question is, so can anybody join for example, an MIT hackathon? Is that something any team can do, or does it require certain, I don't know, certain things?
Okay. So firstly, you don't need a team to join a hackathon. You can join alone. In fact, they encourage you to join alone. And in the first hackathon, I joined alone. I did not know any of my team members. After the hackathon started, it was actually it was really good, because we found ourselves, the team that is now COVIS, we found ourselves within the first 10-15 minutes. It usually takes longer. It usually takes about a couple of hours to form a team, but we kind of had similar ideas, so we got together really quickly, and we still work really well together. We haven't met each other in person at all.
Wow.
In this entire time, we have worked over Zoom and over Slack.
Uh-huh.
And the entire team is, I am in Germany, but the rest of the team is in the United States. They're spread over the entire country. We also have people participating from India, from Italy. So there's people from everywhere. And to put this together, to work with people of different mentality, to be able to work with people who have different goals in life, because not everyone is a physicist there. There's a software developer, there's a business guy, there's people from public health, there's a PhD student. So you really have to understand how to work with people. And this is eye-opening, because in the physics world, we only work with physicists. And socially, we are more or less similar, all physicists. So it's not very difficult to get along with physicists, because we grow up like that. However, to work with different kinds of people from different occupations and different views of life, you really have to know what teamwork is. And I've learned a lot in the past few months about teamwork.
Yeah, so that's good advice, and now more than ever, I mean, this is a pandemic, and we are all kind of had to change our lives because of what's happening. But this is an opportunity also for you to find other people who want to explore really cool ideas, right?
Exactly. So
it doesn't have to be about the disease, right? So it could be about anything. Go ahead. Sorry.
No. The hackathon really attracts people from all over the world. No jokes. I mean, I haven't seen like any country going unrepresented in this hackathon. Maybe a couple of small countries, but right now in the current hackathon that I'm participating in, we have people from in my team. I have people from Netherlands, from Nigeria, and from the United States. Yeah. And I think these are the countries for the current team. So you really have people, Peru, I'm sorry, yes. So you really get to meet a lot of different kinds of people, and then you understand what different problems people have, because the problems that are common, let's say, between USA and Germany might not exist in Latin America, or there are different problems there, which always happens. And it's not easy to clearly see it, that this is the thing. In fact, one of my team members did not realize that Germany does not have counties, it has districts, simply because they had never spoken to about it to anyone.
Yeah.
But okay, that is not important knowledge, but it's like that.
Yeah, you learn exactly. But it's important because if you want to collaborate, you want to be on the same page. You want to
Exactly.
um,
And
but
go
go ahead. No,
Oh,
so
and the pandemic has made it more important that people across the entire world collaborate. Because if you saw that map which connected different countries, it's not a problem of one country. It's not a different problem for different countries. It's the same problem for all the countries, the pandemic. Why it's happening might be a bit different. How bad it's affecting it might be different, but it is an international problem. So people need to come together.
yeah. So think about it, guys. You know, you are in right now in a position where you're learning, but one of the best ways to learn is to actually take something that you're interested in and learn while you do, while
Yeah.
you're doing a project and you know, Peru or your country, wherever you're from, and you're watching, has many social problems that could be, you know, you might not be able to solve it, but you might be able to empower decision making in a data driven, evidence driven way through, you know, AI, machine learning, data analytics, even showing people things through really good visualizations. It's important, right, for decision making. So there's there's a question. So I mean, maybe right, how often are the hackathons? I mean, you probably know a lot more about hackathons and where they're happening, right? MIT is just one.
Yes, there are many other hackathons. You can keep track of them. Maybe I can forward you some links and you can circulate it amongst people who want to know.
Okay. Yes. And then you just join. You just go in there and you join. And if you get lucky, you find a good team, and then you work on something, right?
Exactly. So what is important is when you join a hackathon, you spend a day or so before trying to get an idea, because hackathons always have themes. They always have like a topic,
Yeah.
and your idea must pertain to the topic, must be aligned with the topic. So you give it a couple of days and you decide what you want to do, and then you go in with your idea, you pitch it, you tell people, and you will automatically find the team.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So guys, I'm gonna send when Ian send me some links, I will send you some links. But the best way to start collaborating is continue working in this group that you've learned some of these tools. But there is many problems, right, in our country. So anything that you think is relevant for society to get right, to get better, and where there is data, there are solutions. So just think about that. Anybody else has a question for Ian? Uh, you know, if you really want to contact Ian separately, maybe you can contact me, and then I could ask Ian, you know, how he's doing with time. But if you want to ask a question right now, please do so. If not, I mean, think about what you just saw. You know, this is a physicist, a very good physicist. I mean, I went to university with Ian, and he used to grade my quantum field theory homework. I mean, that's how good he is. But now he's taking all of this knowledge and like putting it in other places that he likes to put it in. He really likes doing this. So think about all the stuff you can do with your skills as you're learning to become a scientist. You're also learning to become a citizen that can use data in very powerful and for social goods. With that, thank you, Ian, for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I know it's late in Germany. I also know you guys are in another lockdown, right?
Yes, things are shut down now. Mobility is not so restricted, but everything indoors are also shut down. Yeah.
Everybody's saying thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's been really nice.
Well, I want to say goodbye, and just let us know if you have an idea or anything like that.
Yes, and I'm open to helping anyone with data analysis and stuff. Get in touch with Alejandro, and as he said, he'll get you in touch with me. No problem.
Yeah, totally. Thank you, guys. Have a good day.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Okay, I am. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Alejandro.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Are we offline? Are we offline?
Okay. Arnold, could you stop the streaming? Is it stopped?